Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, Road to Arrowverse Crisis, episode 13. All right, today marks the last day we're doing the Road to Crisis because we'll have caught up with the current season right in time for Crisis to start airing tonight, this very night that we are recording. With me, as always, are Tess and Sam. How are you guys doing today?
Excited and nervous about Crisis. I really want it to be good, but I'm really afraid that it won't be, or that it'll be both good and bad. So, feeling some trepidation.
Do you want it to be better than the comic or worse than the comic?
Oh, 100% better. I don't know if they can, make something as incoherent as parts of that comic, but
I'll tell you what, this podcast series, Road to Crisis, has me feeling kind of like the season of The Flash, where people have been telling me there's a coming crisis, and I've just heard it so many times, I don't pay attention anymore.
Well, also, we'll get into that later, but first we are going to cover, all the shows that have been airing this season and just catch people up on what's been going on. Unfortunately, only one show is really important. Most other shows seem to have been doing their own thing. But we are going to cover, first off, the most inconsequential show to Crisis, and that is Legends of Tomorrow Season 5. What did you guys think about Legends of Tomorrow Season 5?
I thought it was great when he played Mr. Rogers.
The trailer looks awesome.
The return of Bebo.
Legends does not start until after Crisis, so we will be seeing the Legends characters in Crisis, but we will not. We have not had any material for Legends going into Crisis, so I'm interested to see if they pick up where season 4 left off, or if there will have been a time jump. It's hard to know. They travel in time. It could literally be anything. So there were some unresolved threads at the ends of Legends, and so I am really curious if those threads will play a part in Crisis, or if they're going to be ignored until the beginning of the season after Crisis is over.
As the tagline of the trailer said, the Legends are back, whether you want them to be or not.
That made me so happy.
Okay, and we are going to be covering for the first time today one of the big shows on the CW that I've only seen the first season of, Black Lightning. We're just going to do a real quick discussion about it. So before you hit the skip button, we're not diving into Black Lightning very much, but we are mentioning Black Lightning. What did you guys think of Black Lightning?
We've only seen the first season. Well, we saw the first episode of the second season as well, but mostly just the first season.
Yeah, I am planning on going back and binging Black Lightning at some point. I think Black Lightning we definitely should talk about the premise, and we should definitely talk about sort of its importance as a show on the CW that's technically in the Arrowverse, but I think it suffers from just that word. It's technically in the Arrowverse. It's on a different Earth from all of the other characters, right? It's not on Earth 38, it's not on Earth 1.
That we know of.
I guess that we know of. And so I do not believe that there has been any interaction between this show and the other shows since it aired. I could be wrong, listeners, if something happened in season 3 that I am unaware of. But we do know that Black Lightning will be in Crisis, so I do think that we need to talk about it. It's an interesting show. The first season was pretty good. The pacing was a little off, I thought, which was another reason why I didn't just dive straight into the second season. But basically, Black Lightning is based on a comic book character who first appeared in 1977. He is a character who his power is the ability to harness electricity, right? And he wears little lightning bolts on his uniform. But he is Jefferson Pierce. By day, he's a principal of a high school. And a lot of Black Lightning seems to be, I think this is the strength of the show, a lot of Black Lightning seems to be him negotiating between being a superhero, being a vigilante, but then also trying to deal with the community problems in a town that has largely been abandoned by a lot of people. There's a lot about race here. Jefferson Pierce is, of course, Black, as is his family, as is most of the characters on the show, which makes it a really interesting show in that regard. I think there's only one character who's white who is a main character. But yeah, it's a really interesting show because it deals with a lot of race and class issues. It also deals with a lot of systemic issues that go back to the way that the U.S. government has treated communities like this. So there's a lot of references to like the war on drugs and all of these different things. It's really interesting, I think, to watch this show. And I will say, standout performance of Marvin Crondon Jones III as Tobias Whale, the villain of the series as well. I remember distinctly very much enjoying his performance.
You know, there's a lot to be said about this show. There's definitely, there's definitely a whole episode or two about each of the first two seasons. But the thing that really connects most to where we are right now is I remember this when it happened. So Salim Akil, who is credited as the developer, although his wife, is that right?
Yes.
His wife, Mara, is also listed as a producer on this series, and they basically work together. But Salim Akil said at the beginning, at the outset, that he did not want Black Lightning to be in the Arrowverse because he wanted to have the time and the space and the freedom to develop this universe. And I think that's probably the show's strongest point, and maybe its weakest point too, that it isn't able to lean on some of the other things that the shows are able to. But because of that, it's developed its own brand. I guess now that we're over 2 seasons in, I guess they decided, or Berlanti decided for them, that it's time to fold in.
And Cress Williams, by the way, I'm not as familiar with his work as Sam is, but he is excellent as Jefferson Pierce, I think. I think he holds the show together in some really interesting ways.
Yeah. He was also really excellent as in Veronica Mars a few years earlier.
Yeah. There's another Veronica Mars alum that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes when we talk about Supergirl. But yeah, no, he's really great. Part of it too is that this isn't really an origin story. He was like the superhero Black Lightning, and so the show picks up after he's been like retired for several years. Like he promised he wouldn't do it anymore to his wife to save his marriage, but then he ends up starting to do it again once he realizes that it's something that's really needed by the community. We get to see things about like metahuman, because he is technically a metahuman. We get to see things like, the children of metahumans usually have metahuman powers. So a large part of the show is dedicated to both his daughters, who are also quite wonderful, learning how to use their powers. So one of them, they go, of course, by the very catchy titles of Thunder and Lightning. So one of his daughters can create shock waves and manipulates density, and then Lightning has more closer powers, I guess, more similar powers to her dad, where she can manipulate electricity. So there's a lot there as well about sort of coming into power. It's more of an origin story for his daughters, less of an origin story for him.
Yeah. Okay, let's head on to the next least important show as far as Crisis goes. Another show that takes place in another world, in another dimension from most of the main Arrowverse, Supergirl, season 5.
I don't know. So after last season, we talked about how the last season of Supergirl was probably one of the more politically subversive shows on the CW. I think they sort of set themselves up for failure by doing that, and then having this season come after it, because this season just after the whole Children of Liberty and the whole Lex Cosnia thing, this just seems like not as urgent. It seems like we're returning to sort of the small potatoes storytelling from some previous seasons that didn't work as well. I also really hate what they're doing with Lena this season, which we'll talk about. I'm just haven't been impressed with this season of Supergirl at all.
This season is awful. Here is why. It is awful because Lena's a good guy or she's a bad guy. Please stop. Commit to one and don't commit to where she's a bad guy. I hate this. I hope it's rebooted. She has murdered Eve Tessmacher. And, if Eve Tessmacher deserved to die because she was evil, that's a different conversation. But by basically, Lena takes Hope, the AI, and uses Tessmacher's body to embody the AI, which, that's murder. So that's terrible. And then Mitch Pileggi, from X-Files and other fame, is wasted as OK Boomer God Rama Khan. And that's just a terrible, terrible plot. And it's terrible, and I hate this season.
Yeah, there's two things going on here. So, I think I figured out, it took me 5 episodes to figure out why the Lena storyline bothered me so much. And I think I have it boiled down to this. So, the reason she's so upset, the reason why she's sort of a secondary villain this season, or primary villain, it's actually kind of hard to tell whether she or Leviathan is the villain of the season. The reason she's angry at everybody is because Lex, at the end of the last season, Lex reveals to her as he's dying that she has been lied to by her best friend, Kara, and that Kara is actually Supergirl. And the revelation of this creates this sort of... recreates her into this villain that just wants to destroy Supergirl and to create a device that will prevent people from harming other people, which, again, very, very super villainy there. But, here's why I hate it so much. I get that this season is trying to tell us something about trauma. It's trying to tell us something about betrayal. This idea that Lena Luthor has been traumatized because she's been betrayed by everyone in her life and that she really needs to go to therapy, which is a whole other conversation. But it doesn't work for me for a couple of reasons. One, Lena's smart enough to know why Kara would lie to her. And in fact, she's apologized numerous times to Kara for lying to her. And so for me, it doesn't work because it seems very hypocritical to say, do you remember 3 episodes ago when I came clean to you about this thing that I did and you forgave me? Well, I'm not going to forgive you. So that's one thing. The other thing is they made her into a hysterical woman this season. And I really hate it because in previous seasons, what I loved about Lena is that she operated in this gray area. She was a good person, but she knew that sometimes she had to use questionable methods in order to help people. And so there was this tension between her and Supergirl over what is good look like? How are you a good person? And that worked really well. Now it's just she's being played by Lex, even though Lex is dead, we think at this point. She's being played by Lex, and she's somehow now not smart enough to be able to tell that she's being played by Lex. You're taking a really great character and reducing her down into oh, well, now she's just being hysterical and that's why she's evil. And I don't appreciate that. I didn't appreciate it in Game of Thrones, and I don't appreciate it now.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents about Lena.
I mean, I very much agree. I spent most of my time watching Supergirl, just kind of rolling my eyes at how bad the writing has gotten, how much I don't like any of the characters, just how weird it is for the show to reveal to us that Lena is taking this as poorly as she is, because a much more interesting story is everything is normal until the end of the season, where the reveal is that Lena has been holding all this against Supergirl.
And that's, the possibility here is that we're going to retcon this anyway. That's what Crisis will allow us to do, right?
Hopefully. We'll see. We'll see.
The fun thing is the potential for any of these shows is they can paint themselves into a corner and just be like, haha, Crisis.
And maybe that's what they're doing. The entire plot line with John Jones and his brother,
That
not
was
interesting.
slightly I thought it was slightly interesting from the perspective of like it had something to say about like institutionalization. But other than that, yeah, it just kind of fell flat.
It also does the work of establishing the Martian Manhunter as an important character, because that's the whole point, is that the Monitor comes in, takes Lex away, and drops off Johns' brother, for crisis purposes. And, the Monitor resurfaces after the whole Ramakan thing is whatever, to say, I was preparing you for crisis, and I needed you to work out your childhood trauma with your brother, and the possibility there is what happened on the season doesn't matter. It's very, it does say some interesting things, but overall, But what it does do is perhaps tell us that the Martian Manhunter is going to be important in Crisis, which why wouldn't he be? He's a member of the Justice League.
Well, yeah, because the Monitor comes to him. He doesn't come to Supergirl, which is really interesting, I think.
Yeah. And we also have Brainiac navigating for half a season issues with relationships, which just felt like the writers they just wanted, like, oh, we got to address the fact that Brainy and Nia got together. What's a way that would be awkward to be with a robot?
Right. It's a treading water.
Yeah,
subplot.
I think that several of these seasons, especially Flash, even more than Supergirl, deal with a treading water problem. This season just wasn't interesting. And I'm kind of mad that nobody called Kara from Earth 1 to say, hey, this is what's happening. Like, be ready to go. But it's cool that she has bangs now, I guess.
Yeah, and I can't take it seriously when they keep calling the Leviathan, what is it? Ramakan?
Ramakan.
Yeah.
It's like Khan from Star Trek, but with Rama
right.
on the...
Well, I keep wanting to say Shaka Khan. I know.
Shaka Khan.
The Wrath of Shaka Khan. That would have been a good episode.
I would watch that. I would. I will say, though, Julie Gonzalo, who plays... Andrea Rojas, who's sort of the other, like, secondary villain of the season. She is a Veronica Mars alum, and she plays Parker in season 3 of Veronica Mars. And so it's always nice when you see people from like cult shows get work. So I was like, yay, like she's working. And actually I think she did a fairly good job this season. She just wasn't given a lot to do.
Yeah. None of the characters here are really given a lot to do. I thought it was an interesting scene where, at the end, where Lena is in a bunker and Kara thinks she can still get through, and Alex is all, oh no, we're just going to blow up the bunker. And also a super-powered villain who they keep calling him an earthbender, and it really bothers me.
I'm glad you were bothered too. I was also bothered by this.
It's a fake upping of all the stakes that doesn't seem right.
Well, we thought briefly during and this episode really was called The Wrath of Ramakan. We thought briefly during the episode, after we were both, reminded of what happens in the Crisis comic book, we both thought for a second, wait, this is the end of Supergirl's Earth. Like, he's actually going to do the thing and end the Earth, and this is how Crisis starts. That could be cool. Wouldn't that have been great if, like, the last episode of Supergirl before Crisis was their world being literally destroyed?
Yes. Well, let's
That doesn't happen, though.
And we're treated with the scene at the very end where Mar-Novu, the Monitor, comes in and reveals that he has had Lex Luthor playing chess because he needs a mind like Lex's.
Hooray.
Which hooks into the comic book, as we talked about last time. Lex Luthor, well, different Lex Luthors? Various versions of Lex Luthor play a big part in the comic. So that was interesting. Also, I don't know. After all the stuff with Lena, I'm ready for Lex to be the villain again.
Okay, let's go on to Batwoman, because I don't want to talk about this. You guys, you go ahead, Tess.
You don't want to talk about Batwoman? Batwoman is, this is the first season of Batwoman, so there's not a lot to really say about it so far. It kind of reminds me of Arrow Season 1, in a lot of ways. In a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways. But we were introduced to Kate Kane as Batwoman back in the Elseworlds crossover, which was last year's crossover, as sort of a backdoor pilot. This show does not pick up after Elseworlds, though. It actually starts with an origin story, which is my least favorite kind of superhero story at this point. There have been so many origin stories. I think origin stories are really hard to tell. And so I'm not sure this works as well as they thought maybe that it would. But Ruby Rose is wonderful, I think, as Kate Kane. I do like her as Batwoman. But basically, the premise of the show is when she was a child, her twin sister and her mother got into a car wreck that I think they say it was caused by the Joker.
It was her twin sister, and her mother. They were all three in the car.
And like the Joker did something. It caused a lot of damage. Their car starts to go off of a bridge, and she is saved by Batman, but her mother and her sister plunge apparently to their deaths.
Because unlike in The Dark Knight, or like in The Dark Knight, I don't know. Basically something similar to The Dark Knight, he has to choose between... No, he doesn't have to choose between saving two things. He has to choose between going after the Joker and saving people from falling, which is similar to The Dark Knight. And he chooses going after the Joker because he thinks he had the car secured. He made a mistake. Whoopsie, people die. Batman's fallible.
Right, and so that's sort of the like her backstory, and so like her father, fast forward to the future where she's an adult, Batman has been gone. He like disappeared at some point. Her father runs Gotham is basically sort of this like class dystopia where like rich people hire all this private security. Her father runs like the biggest security firm in the city. He's married to the mayor of the city, and she has been sort of training to join this security firm that her father runs. And so that's sort of where she is at the beginning of the show.
She's a defense contractor and CEO, not mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, she's a defense contractor.
Same thing, really.
She sort of acts like, I'm very confused about that though, because she sort of acts like the mayor. Like she does some things that are very mayory, like because at the very beginning episode, like they're turning off the bat signal, and so like that seems like something the mayor would do.
Well, anyway, a CEO of a giant company in Gotham really would just be the mayor. I mean, they wouldn't even bother with.
Right, but Gotham has a new mysterious villain.
Alice.
Hooray!
Yeah, the leader of the Wonderland gang. Who's played by Rachel Scarston, who you should know her from Lost Girl, if you watch that show, or from she was in Birds of Prey, right?
Yes.
As well. Yeah. So there's a little bit of synchronicity going on here. So she's the new villain, and she seems to have this vendetta against Kate and against Kate's father. It turns out that she is actually Beth, Kate's twin sister, who survived the crash. This isn't a huge spoiler because they literally bring this up in the first episode.
Thankfully, they didn't try to pull the thing where they're like, what's their connection? You don't know.
Yeah, they very quickly get to it. The big mystery is like how she survived and like how she has become Alice, who is like very insane, very murdery. I think she's played very well by Rachel Scarston. And so she's sort of the main villain
Andy,
for most of the...
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Were you referring to Alice as the villain, or are you referring to, what's her name, Sophie? Were you referring to her as the villain, possibly? The one who ruined Kate Kane's life by being, the worst?
Okay.
And not because she would... No. Not because of what she did in the past. That was a jerk move. But being just terrible in the present.
Oh, yeah, she's pretty terrible.
You see, she's terrible the whole time.
So the other backstory, so Kate Kane is gay. She is a lesbian. And I think she's a lesbian in the comics as well. So this is
yes.
very true to this character. And this is a story out of the comic books where she went to a pretty prestigious military academy.
DC West Point.
Yeah, DC West Point. And was in a relationship with a fellow student, Sophie, who's played by Megan Tandy. for 3 years. Like, it was a long-term relationship that they kept secret in this very don't ask, don't tell. Well, somebody turns them in, and so they're basically forced to sign a denial of the relationship. Like, they're basically saying, like, yeah, we're not gay, we're not together, or they have to leave the school. And Kate signs it. Kate leaves. She gets kicked out rather than sign it. Sophie signs it. And basically that's her way of breaking up with Kate. So there's this like betrayal going on. I will say I think it's interesting. There is a lot about privilege here that they're trying to say. Like, Kate can walk away from the school because she's rich and can just like hop on a yacht and go somewhere else, whereas Sophie doesn't have a backup plan. She has to be in this job or not. A little heavy-handed, and the fact that Sophie is kind of the worst in the present kind of derails some of that subtlety they were going for.
Right.
I think.
But I will say, one thing that I really appreciated as a white man is there's a reveal very recently that Sophie made the choice to quote unquote betray Kate after Kate's father comes in and has a talk with Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so, yeah.
It
And
made
by the way,
so much sense.
It did. By the way, I just, since we're doing Veronica Mars things in this episode, the one of the main people in Gotham, of course, Kate's dad, shares a name with one of the most powerful people in Neptune, Jake Kane.
Yeah, Jake Kane. They both have the same name.
So for fun, there's 3.
So yes, there's a lot going on here. I think part of it is too. So Kate Kane finds out in the first episode that her cousin Bruce Wayne was Batman, and so she decides that she's going to take on this mantle. There's a few suit changes in the first 3 episodes until we get to the like iconic Batwoman with the red hair outfit. But it's interesting because we do get some updated versions of different characters too. Like, we get Luke Fox, who is Lucius Fox's son, which I thought he's like a pretty good addition, I think, to like this team. So she has her own little team, but it mainly just consists of him.
And while Batman is MIA, he may not be dead. He might still be alive. Lucius Fox is dead.
Yes.
Yes, Lucius Fox is definitely dead.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because that's Batwing, so we might get Batwing.
Yeah, and then
for fans of the pod who are listening but do not know who Batwing is, he's Luke Fox, he's Lucius Fox, Morgan Freeman from the Nolan films' son, but he's also basically Batman Beyond. So, Batwing, look for that.
Yeah, and he's great. Like, I think he's a good like person to have in the headset.
As totally not Curtis from Arrow.
Yeah, no, I think he does a pretty good job. Actually, I would say the person who steals the show the most, besides Alice, is Kate Kane's stepsister, Mary Hamilton, who's played by Nicole Kang. She's great because she's like this like social media influencer rich girl by day, but then like she also is like running this like vigilante like underground medical center where she just like patches up people who are criminals or who don't have insurance. And I really like that this character. She's really funny and really great, but I also really like the idea that like there's more than one way to like be like go against the system, you know, to be a vigilante. It's not just like putting on a costume and going out and beating up people. It's also, you know, addressing systemic issues like lack of healthcare. So there's some good stuff in here.
Right. Batwoman also does Hush better than the Batman animated movie Hush. I won't say anything. An episode of this is pretty much dedicated to the plotline of the movie or of the comic series Hush, and it does it better than DC's animated version of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would, if I had to sum up this season, I would say there's a lot of really good things going for it. It is trying to say a lot of really interesting things politically, especially in the last episode, which was just kind of crazy in the amount of like taking pot shots at corporations that it did. But I think it struggles from it's still proof of concept. This is still kind of basic first season Arrow. like, let's see how this would work. Like, they're playing with all these ideas, but I don't think it's necessarily cohered enough to have its own voice yet.
Right. And there's an annoying thing with the writing where Alice keeps talking like Alice from Alice in Wonderland, which I get the motif, but it is annoying.
Yeah, it can be. I just really love her one-liners, though. Like,
also, Alice
so
sounds like a mutual friend of ours, and it really bothers me.
Something that came up, and I think it was either the last episode or the next to last episode. It may have been the next to last episode, but I'm hoping that as we, again, if the theme of all of this is the potential for a soft reboot or a whole reboot, I hope this one has a soft reboot, because we, following the first season of Arrow, we obviously have Kate as Oliver. And we got a Luke Fox really quickly as Felicity, who wasn't originally on board. We're missing our Diggle, but we got our Diggle. Julia Pennyworth shows up for an episode, and
gosh.
I really want her, like, she needs, like, full-time right now. Like, go back and reshoot episodes if you have to after Crisis. But she was
wonderful.
great.
Why wouldn't Sophie be our Diggle? A contractor.
Oh my god, I just hate her so
Ex-soldier.
much.
No.
Like, here's the thing.
I mean, tragically die, maybe?
I get it, what they're trying to
like
do
Tommy,
with her
she could be
character.
the Tommy.
Yeah, she
there
could
you
be
go.
the Tommy.
Fixed it for you.
I know what they're trying to do with her character, but she again comes off like, to me, she comes off like Iris from The Flash, where, like, I understand what you're trying to do, but you're not giving her enough to do, and she just comes off as being this, like, kind of killjoy. Like, oh, you can't do this. This is going to get you killed. Like, even though you were in a military academy and have been training for this for a long time. You know what I mean? Like, there's some stuff going on with her character that doesn't really work.
Yeah, the only person I think who's worse on this show than her is her husband. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Also, Rachel Maddow is Vesper Fairchild, which is great. Worth a mention. Just worth a mention. In case you were missing Rachel Maddow in a comic book property.
Right. It's Rachel Maddow is pretty much J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah, I will probably only be watching one CW show as it airs after Crisis, besides Legends. It will probably be Batwoman. So
I think that's a fair choice, to be honest with you. Like, if you're going to limit watching these shows as they air, I think Batwoman would be a good choice. I really want to see where it goes.
Right. All right, guys. Let's really quickly hit up The Flash.
Can I ask you a question, Andy? I have a really important question for you. This is the thing I care most about in this season leading up to Crisis. I want to know, because Tessa and I, watch these together, so, like, we might have, I just need an outsider's opinion. Was there an episode we missed? Was there an episode of Flash Season 6 where the Flash gang find out that one of their best friends and a member of the Flash team, Earth 2 Harrison Wells, is dead? Was there an episode where they found out about that and spent an entire episode mourning one of the major characters from the entire show, who appeared in multiple episodes of multiple seasons and also had a daughter who we were also very invested in? Did I miss that episode?
Yeah, you did.
Which one was that?
It was Flash Season 27, Episode 8. No. They did not ever cover that because that happened in Arrow, and apparently Oliver doesn't talk to Barry.
And I just want to say that this is why I may never watch another episode of Flash again, because that was just that's my biggest comment about this season of Flash, is something they didn't do that they absolutely should have. And they'll shoehorn it into Crisis, I guess, but the way to honor a character.
Well, okay. So
you're not really honoring most of these characters this season.
So I have so many issues with this so far with this season of Flash. First of all, I think that this is the worst writing that CW has done in a very long time, and I am including Supernatural in that.
And Riverdale.
Well, Riverdale's got amazing writing.
What are you talking about? Riverdale is amazing and everything makes sense.
Look, Riverdale knows what it is. The Flash is trying to be dramatic, and it's so ham-fisted. The villain for this half of the season, Bloodwork. They're ruining Heroes alum. Played Suresh on Heroes.
Sedhill Ramamurthy.
Right. They are making him into the most ham-fisted villain. Like, there's a scene where he, as a doctor, has decided that he's going to have to kill some people to find a cure for a disease he has. And the camera zooms in on the Hippocratic Oath, but specifically, what part of the Hippocratic Oath? The thing that says "do no harm," with his reflection on this plaque.
Yeah, the writing hasn't been great this season, and part of it is, again, like we said with Supergirl, they're really treading water until Crisis. And honestly, treading blood. Okay, first of all, I actually asked Sam before we started airing this episode, is his name Bloodwork? I'm not familiar with the comics that he's in, but like the way that he says his own name every time in this, I was like, is it Bloodborne or Bloodwork? Like he's constantly shouting it, but it doesn't, like there's definitely some overacting going on here on a Shatner level. And it's kind of ruining this character, even though I really like Sentinel Ramamurthy. I have since he was in Heroes.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just so much wrong with this season in general. I have just grown incredibly frustrated with the Killer Frost stuff.
Really? I liked the Killer Frost stuff this season. It's the only stuff that I like besides Ralph.
I don't like making Killer Frost just a petulant teenager.
Oh, see, well, yeah, okay, I get where you're coming from on that. I really love the episode where, because one of the decisions is that Killer Frost is going to be the main personality for a while, because Caitlin has been the main personality for so long, and Killer Frost has really not had a chance to live a life, right? Like, she's only been this alternate personality to Caitlin. So we get to see Danielle Panabaker play Killer Frost with the white hair and everything for most of this season. I loved the parts of, I think it's the first or second episode, where Cisco takes her to his girlfriend's art show, and she's just like dragging on all the art. Like, she even tells Cisco's girlfriend, she's like, you know not all this is your best work, right? And like, so like, I appreciate like the snark that comes with Killer Frost. But I could see like in some of the later episodes of the half season where they do kind of make her a little more watered down as a character.
Right. Then we have a character who is in the running with Iris West Allen for me, for how much I dislike this character, because the character's reactions are terrible. And I even forgot her name. She's yes, there we go. Allegra Garcia. This is great for me because she's always with Iris, so I can keep thinking like maybe a meteor will just take out my two least favorite characters at the same time. Allegra Garcia is another meta who has ultraviolet powers and is really introduced in a really interesting way, where she's being framed for murder and yada yada yada. You find out she wants to become a reporter, and so she joins Iris's newspaper, the newspaper, because newspaper is a great kind of business to start in our modern day, and gets so angry with Iris for not telling her that Barry is the Flash immediately.
I will say though, like the one thing that I really empathized with this character during one scene. I think it was in the last episode when she finds the so nobody tells her anything, which is sort of the running joke of the season. She finds the headline of Crisis that Barry's gonna vanish, basically, or die, or whatever, in Crisis. And she confronts Iris about it, and she's like, why are we following any other story? Like, what else is there that's important? And that's kind of how I felt this entire season. Like, what are you doing? Like, you were told by the Monitor in the first episode that Barry Allen is going to die in Crisis, and you've literally done nothing except for whine about it for half a season. Like, that's kind of how I felt. Like, sure, they have to fight blood work, but like, nobody is processing this emotionally, and nobody is talking to each other. Like, if you were actually going to prepare for this, like, wouldn't you make Star Labs into like some sort of crisis action center? Like, where is all your prep? Where are the food supplies? Where are, you know what I mean? Like, where is all the stuff that you might need in case of a catastrophe?
And the number of times that Barry or another character says with a straight face, "Crisis is coming."
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It works when it's written. It does not work hearing an actor say it with a straight face.
Yeah.
So are we going to talk about Nashwells now?
Please.
I do have one. There is one saving grace episode of this season.
Is King Shark in this season? I missed it.
No. It is an episode about Ralph Dibny.
Directed by Danielle Panbaker.
Yeah. And it's just a plot line where Ralph Dibny goes on a James Bond-esque adventure, and Barry decides to join him, and Barry screws everything up because Barry is dumb. Yeah. I mean, that was really just all I want to say. That part of this season was really fun, but it also felt like an episode of Legends of Tomorrow, so maybe that's why it was fun.
Well, they also wasted Danny Trejo this season, which I think is like the worst crime of this season, because there's an episode where Breacher shows up to tell Cisco that Gypsy has been murdered, and she has been murdered, in fact. And by the way, this is fridging. I know we talk about this a lot on the show, but Cisco actually says the words at the end of the episode, she wasn't the one, but I think I had to be with her in order to be ready to be with the one. If that's the entire purpose of a character that you have killed, you have fridged that character.
Retro. Okay. Tessa, tell me if I'm wrong, but if that line wasn't in there, would that still have been fridging? If that line wasn't in there, and if Cisco's entire little thing was a little different, and Trejo just came in and was like, "My daughter's dead, and you dated her. I need help."
Yeah, and 5% of her life had to do with you.
Yeah, if it had been staged differently, then her death would not have been fridging. Female characters can die. That's fine. It's just when you have to position it around a male character's growth, that's a problem.
Well, and male character, in theory, a male character could be fridged. It just doesn't happen because this is where we are, which is the whole point. If we had these issues where we were talking about people irregardless of gender or anything dying, and I know I just said regardless of gender.
Yeah, Dr. Sam.
Yeah, well, it's in the dictionary. It's a word. So, but if you had people dying for this reason across genders, we'd still be upset about it. The fact is, it doesn't happen to male characters, and
it's almost never positioned in this way. It's never positioned as I dear listeners, if you know of a film or a TV show in which a female character says about a male character, I wasn't supposed to be with him, but I think I had to be with him in order to know who I was actually supposed to be with, and that male character is dead. Please let me know. I would love to know if that exists.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind doesn't count because he's dead. He's just erased from her mind, and that's kind of the whole point of it.
What about 501 Days of Summer, the sequel to 500 Days of Summer?
You mean 501 Days of Autumn?
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's the thing is that Danny Trejo is wonderful, and I just really wish that instead of doing this whole thing about Like, instead of doing a whole episode about fridging Gypsy, who was an awesome character, like, I wish that they had just done a Cisco and Breacher go on an adventure episode.
Right.
Like,
because
yeah, like,
the way Trejo comes in, though, that scene is great.
Machete breaches.
yeah, like, if that scene was, like, the whole episode, like, because, yeah, it is a great scene where he just, like, sits on the bed and he's, like,
Right.
just so down. Yeah.
Cisco is with his new girlfriend, sleeping in bed, and a breach just opens. Danny Trejo walks out and sits on the edge of the bed.
And she's okay with it.
Yeah.
That's how you know she's a keeper.
Right.
And see, like, again, yeah, that was the whole episode.
Oh,
fine.
and who killed Gypsy?
Oh, an alternate Cisco.
Yeah.
A Cisco from another Earth.
One who foolishly did not give up his powers.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
Right.
I'm enjoying the multiverse stuff, and I'm enjoying it more in Arrow than I am in Flash. I think that this season of Flash is sort of a waste of time.
Right.
Like,
Speaking of,
I wish there was a lot more groundwork being put together for Crisis.
right. Speaking of a waste of time, let's talk about the new Kavanaugh this season.
I've got this one. I've got this for you.
Please.
So Nash Wells is our new Wells, and he's there because he needs to dig a hole. So, I can tell you where this comes from. This comes from the 13th season of The Simpsons, from an episode called Homer the Moe. The Simpsons is always each episode is divided into 3 acts. This is one of my favorite episodes because it makes no sense. And so you can see the connection between this episode of The Simpsons and this season of The Flash. The whole entire first act of this episode of The Simpsons is Homer recalling in Moe's Tavern a story about how his son Bart has just been digging a hole. And he just starts randomly digging a hole one day. And he's just digging the hole. And Homer comes out and says, "Boy, why are you digging a hole?" And he goes, "Oh." And that's it. There's no explanation. He's just digging a hole. And that's really all that Nash Wells does in this season of The Flash. He's just digging a hole. Why? Oh, crisis. And so he keeps digging. And the payoff at the end of the first act of this episode of The Simpsons is Homer says, "And that's how I became King of the Morlocks." And then the rest of the episode is about how Moe starts a new Moe's Tavern and REM shows up and good times. It has nothing to do with Bart digging a hole. And that's what Nash Wells is doing. He's there. We lost Earth 2 Wells for this. And he's obviously Pariah from Crisis. I get it. It's all good and fun. But I watched this and I was like, this is the stupid version of a stupid joke from The Simpsons.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I will say I think it is really funny that Pariah is another Wells. Like, of course, like, Pariah is another Wells in the Arrowverse, because the Wells joke is sort of a well. It's something that keeps on giving, right? It's something that works pretty well, but it just, this is not a good version of it. And I might like Sherlock better than I like this.
Yeah, by the way, in the last episode of The Flash, the Last Temptation of Barry, episode 2, Cecilia makes a callback to Stupid Wells, which is the final insult for me. Like, oh sure, we can take a minute to mourn Stupid Wells, but y'all don't even know the one you actually like is dead. Okay, cool. Anyway, Nash Wells does give us the stinger for all 4 episodes of the Arrowverse, where he's digging the hole, and eventually he's digging the hole because Crisis stuff he gets sucked into.
Right. He wants to kill the false god, the Monitor. Like, yeah, great. Okay, let's jump right to the only season that actually mattered and was actually really good. Arrow. All right, guys,
wonderful season.
Let's aim for the hour mark here. So let's, speed this up. But also, I really think that anyone who is stuck with us needs to watch this season of Arrow.
It's really good. Like, there have been some good seasons of Arrow. There have been some bad seasons of Arrow. This is a good season of Arrow. And considering the fact that it is the final season of Arrow, it works. It works so well. And it's doing the thing that I wish all the other shows were doing, which is from the very first episode, it's about Crisis. Like, the Monitor shows up at the end of season 7, tells Oliver that he's going to die in Crisis, but that he needs him to save the multiverse, or to save the universe. And so Oliver leaves with him, and the entire premise of the season so far has been Oliver Queen goes on adventures in the multiverse. And it's great.
Yeah, and what I've been complaining about this entire time is that, as an example of that, in the very first episode of this season, Starling City, the Monitor sends Oliver on a fetch quest to Earth 2. Diggle tags along with him, unbeknownst to him.
Because they're best friends.
Right, and you don't separate best friends. And eventually meets up with Earth 2 Laurel, who we are good friends with now, everybody except for Oliver. And they do a thing, and Oliver disobeys, and because Oliver has disobeyed, Earth 2 is destroyed.
Yeah, that's the first episode.
That is the first episode.
It has stakes in a way that the other shows don't. Like, the idea that, oh, you screwed up, this entire Earth is gone now.
Yeah, the first, and also in Starling City, the first episode, we have the 20 forward flash forward is still alive and well, and the 20 forward flash forward is alive and well up to the up till the end of episode 3.
Right. So one thing I think that this season really did that was really cool. All right, this season is 10 episodes long. We have 7 episodes, then Crisis, and then 2 to wrap it up.
Which are back-to-back episodes, so they're really a TV movie.
Right. And the thing that's cool here, there's 7 seasons of Arrow. Oh, maybe each episode is going to be thematically similar to one of the seasons of Arrow.
That's really cool. Wait, Tommy dies again in the first episode?
Yeah. The first episode is a retelling of season 1 in beautiful ways, and I loved it. And then they hit either the main plot line or a version of the flashback plot line for each season, and it really works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because it doesn't just work as episode 1 is season 1, episode 2 is season 2. Like, different characters encounter these sort of revisitings or retellings in different ways. Because we don't get Oliver sort of renegotiating Deathstroke, probably for the best. We get the future Green Arrow and company, so Mia, William, Zoe, and Connor, they have to encounter the Deathstroke gang. So we get retellings of these things, but they're from different characters' perspectives, as well as Oliver's,
right,
which I think works pretty well.
The entire Chinese subplot of season 3, or was it? It was. No, it was season 4. The Oliver going to
Hong Kong.
Panda Narwhal.
Right. No, I'm trying to think of Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, season 3's Leap of Faith has them going to Nanda Parbat,
right,
where they hook up with Talia and Thea, which is our way of interacting with Ra's al Ghul again.
Right. So these things keep coming back, and I really enjoyed it, and this season was just really good, especially as we're preparing. I don't really want to talk specific spoilers per episodes, but overall, preparing for Crisis, that is what Oliver is doing. He's being sent on these missions. I even think that I think it's the 6th episode that's a Groundhog Day episode.
Which is great.
Right. I think one of the thematic things is season 6 was pretty much Groundhog Day, and they couldn't get it right.
Yeah, well, and I think that what's interesting about this is we always talk about how Flash is usually, the Flash team is usually the one that's most emotionally well-adjusted, although this season completely disproves that. This season of Arrow is very much Oliver sort of reminiscing on all of these things, revisiting all of these things, tying up loose ends, going through some of these issues. But it's also him coming to terms with his own death, right? This idea that he's going to die in Crisis, that Crisis is happening. He's left his family, right? He knows that his children will grow up without him because of this. And so there's a lot of emotional work, not just for Oliver, though. We get emotional work for Black Siren, right? This is my favorite version of Laurel. Like, this season, Black Siren has had some really good storylines dealing with the loss of Earth 2 and her getting to say goodbye to Quentin Lance and like all of this stuff. I mean, it's just beautiful, beautiful character work that's being done.
Right. And the big plot line with the 2040 crew being transferred through time to the 2019 crew is really well done. I really like the interactions of all these characters.
Yes, I was really happy about this. By the way, I tweeted about this, so I won't cover it again, but basically this is not time travel. This is monitor magic, and as long as we're very clear about that, I love what they've done here. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, we don't get any like flashbacks, right? There's no B storylines once they both come together.
Yeah, there's just I think it's just so interesting too. Like everything the story feels very urgent. It feels very important, and it also just feels so focused on crisis. Like that's all they talk about is crisis. How are they going to prepare for it? How are they going to survive it? What are they going to do? It's great.
The other shows could have done this too. There was nothing stopping them.
Correct. And by not doing this, it did the shows a huge disservice, because one of the big things in The Flash is blood work takes over Barry's body. Except we know that Crisis is the next episode, so there's no risk.
Right.
None at all.
Well, and like I said about Supergirl, we thought for a moment maybe it would connect, in that her Earth was going to be destroyed and that was going to be part of Crisis. That would have been cool, because otherwise I'm just like, nobody called Supergirl, huh? I know Oliver and her aren't best friends, but really?
But still.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I will say about this Arrow is I really wish he would have called Barry at any point and told him that Earth 2 was gone.
Didn't you have friends there?
Yeah, didn't you have friends there? That would be my only real complaint about Oliver this season. There's not enough communication. Right. But also we get to see Lila transforming slowly over a couple of episodes into her Crisis character.
Which was great.
So, yeah. She's now Harbinger.
But we also get a feeling for how powerful and well thought out the Monitor is. I really like LaMonica Garrett, who plays the Monitor. He's a lot of fun. But it's just this sense of oppression from the Monitor, and how he is forcing Oliver One to be like, no, you're going to die. You need to come to terms with your death, and you shouldn't go against me because I'm a god.
Yeah, I was a little uncomfortable with that episode. Like, I like the Groundhog Day conceit. I won't go too far into this. There's a lot in Western literature about heroes, and like the idea is that the hero has to face their fate, right? It goes all the way back to Beowulf and this idea of facing your own fate and like accepting your own death. And I think that's what they're trying to go for in this season. I will say the Monitor sort of like torturing Oliver a little bit through this Groundhog Day episode. Like you have to go through the cycle over and over again until you just accept what I have told you. That feels a little bit like gaslighting to me. like you just have to accept it, that you're gonna die and you can't help anything. And that felt a little weird. But other than that, I
Right. Yeah. This was good. Now just really quick spoilers, like Roy losing his arm. Oh, Roy. Diggle showing up and grabbing Roy.
Yeah, Roy Harper is here for Crisis.
Yeah, and just in time to lose an arm.
Yeah. Doesn't in the
Arsenal,
in one of the comics,
Arsenal loses an arm.
Yeah, I thought this was maybe a reference to the comics as well.
Yeah, it's going to be, but I'm sure it's one of those things that'll get undone in the reboot.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because at the end of all of the shows, we get the scene with Wells, Nash Wells, digging the hole and getting sucked into the portal or whatever. But then on Flash and Arrow, we also get a scene where the sky turns red, which is obviously a precursor to Crisis. That's in the comic book as well. And so it's interesting to me that the Flash characters are in Central City. They're at Star Labs when this happens. Oliver and company are on Lian Yu. when this happens. So I'm going to be really curious. I am curious what's going to happen. I am curious how they're all going to get together into the same room.
Yeah. And I just know it's antithetical to this entire series of podcasting to burn through Arrow, which one is good and two, is way more important to the rest of Crisis. But we'll have the ability to talk a lot about Arrow. I've got to get going and record The Mandalorian with Ariel. And Crisis starts, so I am going to make sure that this episode's uploaded now, and we will get to Crisis on Wednesday, correct, Sam?
Yes.
That is the plan. So we're going to watch the 3 episodes and then record and have it out as soon as possible.
Right. Do you guys have any final thoughts about any of these current seasons?
I mean, Arrow's the only one that I was, like, super invested in. And it actually kind of made me sad. Like, I actually have a feeling of sadness that Arrow is going to be done after this, even though I think it's the right call. So I guess that's kind of where I am right now. I'm kind of sad. I'm nervous about Crisis.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go.
Oh,
ready for the show.
We got to see Anatoly, and Oliver didn't screw him over.
Yeah, Anatoly like has a nice life as like a owner of a bar.
Right, a Moldovan themed bar.
Oh, Anatoly. Yeah. So even like little characters like that Oliver has seen throughout the years get sort of send-offs here.
Right. Adrian Chase.
Katana is in this. Yeah. An alternate Adrian Chase, Katana. Oh God, what was her name? She was a villain from the first season.
China White.
Yeah, China White. She's in this. Yeah, so I mean, Talia al Ghul. Thea gets a good send-off. Like, it's a really good season.
Yeah. Sam, do you have anything to say?
I miss Riverdale. I'm looking forward to watching that again.
Yep. We look forward to all this. But go ahead and plug your pluggables, guys.
I'm on Twitter at Suela Tessa. Suela spelled SWEHLA.
And I'm on Twitter at Sam_Morris9.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Hebrews Pale, and you can find the first part of the Crisis on Wednesday. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.